Hello and welcome back to Tachikawa. You are listening to Sakamichi Nights, coming to you on a Friday again. This is a regular thing for us now. How are you today, Daniel Bellamy?
I'm great. Do you want me to elaborate?
Yes, I do.
Really, really great.
Okay, why is that?
Man, elaborate.
This
means
is a real,
so much more than I expected.
It's a real stumper, this one.
We don't go this in depth into my general condition right at the start of the show. I'm gonna wait until I'm a few beers into it.
You lie down on the couch and tell me about your feelings.
I'm doing well. It's been a good week in the bar. It's been cold, but people are still coming in to drink cold beer. You ever think about doing a hot beer?
No, and I'll tell you why not. Because I've had a hot beer at Bakushu Kobo, I believe it's called, Churline Brewery and Brew Pub. They served a hot beer once.
Okay.
And it was,
intentionally?
Yes, it was disgusting. It was supposed to be drunk hot. It was served hot. It was awful. Beer should be cold. Tea should be hot.
It was some kind of traditional style that's meant to be served hot, as I'm guessing.
No, they were just like, we've invented a new beer and it's
It's
supposed
a
to be
hot
served
beer.
hot. No, you haven't. You've just made some terrible beer and served it hot.
Interesting.
Speaking of hot things,
Yeah.
one of our regular customers, and in fact, joint guestingest guest on this podcast, Tyler, or as he now likes to be known, P-Funk,
Yeah.
was in here the other day.
Don't dead name him.
P-Funk, he has just been to Florida, where he comes from, for Christmas and New Year. And he told me an anecdote about a New Year's party that he ended up, this is a very Florida detail, drifting to on an out-of-gasoline boat across a lake.
Yeah.
And he ended up at this party where there was a pool, there were fireworks, there were shots, there was pizza, and it was hosted by one of the creators of the Modern Warfare franchise.
Right.
So it got me thinking, what is the wildest party you have ever been to?
Well, man, I don't know if I can top that. I also heard P-Funk's story about that. I would have to say that I don't think I've ever gone to anything good by way of a boat that was out of gas.
Right. Only bad things have happened to you in that kind of situation.
I mean, you're asking for it, aren't you? Right? That's a horror movie setup. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been to any really crazy parties. I did kind of narrowly miss Doom when like a floor in a house collapsed at a kind of too many people in an old shitty house on campus party that happened at my university.
Right.
I left before the floor collapsed. I went home at a sensible hour because, I had classes and studying to do.
4 a.m.
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't that late. I'm sure we just rambled down the street to the next party. But, at some point that evening, I didn't find out till the next day, but apparently floor gave in.
Was everyone okay?
There were some injuries. Nobody died, but, there were some injuries. Floor collapsing. There's people everywhere, right? There's people under that floor. There's people on that floor. So some bad things were going to happen, but nobody died.
Okay. Well, that does sound like a pretty wild party.
Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't there. I was in bed getting ready for class the next day.
Great. Well, you've really answered my question there. So thanks for that.
Yep.
Brewery update.
What about you?
What about
What's your
me?
wild party history?
Well, I had a house party when I finished secondary school, or high school, as you might call it. And some of the people who I invited, my friends, you might call them, decided to push the hay bale that my parents had bought for our chickens to use.
Okay.
They pushed it down a hill and into a river. And so the next morning I made them push it out again.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
That was pretty wild.
And back up the hill.
Yes, and back up the hill.
Bring that shit back up here.
But it was soaking wet.
That's a problem, I guess. Is it? Or is it? I don't know. I don't know much about hay bales.
It was quite a long time ago, so all of the other details are a little hazy now.
Okay.
Brewery update.
Yes.
Let's move on. It's been a busy week in the brewery. We've actually had 2 brew days, which is the first time we've done that in a week.
Back-to-back brew days.
Back-to-back brew days, Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, we made a hazy IPA. What we hope will be a hazy IPA when it comes out. The next in our Haze Craze series.
People like the hazy IPAs.
People do like hazy IPAs, that is correct. And on Wednesday, we made what will probably be a hoppy Pilsner when it comes out of the tank. And in addition to that, we dry hopped the hazy IPA, which was very exciting, wasn't it?
I would wager more exciting than you would hope it normally would be.
It was almost as exciting as a P-Funk party.
Almost.
But not quite.
Not quite.
So dry hopping is the process of adding hops to the beer once it's already in the fermentation tank. Right? We add hops during the boil when we're making the beer to extract bitterness and to extract flavor and a little bit of aroma. How long you boil them for changes how much bitterness or flavor or aroma you're left with at the end of it. And then we also add hops to the tank, mainly just to get aroma out of them. And for hazy IPAs, that's quite a big part of the final product, is dry hopping the beer during active fermentation. So that's what we were trying to do yesterday. I was taking measurements from the tank all day, waiting till about 60% of the starting sugar had been converted into alcohol. And that's the timing at which we add the dry hops through a little port on the top of the tank. So release the pressure of the tank, climb up there on a ladder, 3 cups of hops, pour them in through the port. Simple, right?
Yeah, sure. It all seems very simple.
Yep. From your perspective, would you like to describe what happened next?
The first 2, they weren't cups, right? They were pitchers.
Pitchers.
I'm not sure how much
2
was going in
liter
there,
pitchers of, there were about 900 grams of hops in each one.
I was the pitcher.
Yeah.
I was pitching them up to you.
Does that make me the catcher?
Sure, the pitcher catcher. So you put the first one in, I hand you the next one, you put the next one in. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. I handed you the third one, and you put the third one in. And then, I mean, it seemed like this was a little bit unexpected, but like liquid foam immediately began shooting out of the top of the tank all over the place, hit the ceiling, like spraying out in all directions. The sliding door to the tap room was open at the time. People were watching you in all your glory when this happened.
The Wednesday evening show, yes.
Yeah, the Wednesday evening show. It got very quickly shut as people realized they were in the front row of a Gallagher show.
They were in the splash zone.
And then you were up there desperately trying to get, it was a tri-clamp, so there's a few different parts that go together to put the top back on that and close it. And you were trying to do this while it was kind of furiously erupting out of this port.
A hop volcano is what we call that in the business.
Technical term.
While the beer is fermenting, there is lots of carbon dioxide that is in solution in the beer. It's dissolved in the beer. So when you pour the hops in and they dissolve into a powder in the beer, that provides nucleation points for bubbles to form around the powdery hops. And if a lot of that happens all at the same time, then you're going to get a lot of CO2 released all at the same time.
Say 3 pitchers worth.
So from my perspective, the first thing I felt was a wave of CO2 passing over me. Right. And that's when I realized that something very wrong was about to happen. So I grabbed the lid and the gasket and desperately tried to jam it on. But the pressure was just a bit too high and the gasket wouldn't sit on straight.
Yeah.
So I'm on the top of a ladder trying to put this port lid back on and screw a tri-clamp back onto this thing whilst beer is spraying, let's say, all over me. And I was also aware that my phone was in my pocket during this whole procedure. Yeah. That survived, you'll be glad to hear. But my t-shirt and trousers got rather sticky and wet, which is...
Those are washable, though, eh?
Yes, that is often how I like to end my Wednesday evenings. But yeah, hopefully we didn't lose too much beer. It did make quite a mess all over the windows and floor and me and the ladder and just about everything else in the brewery. But I have to say, it smelled pretty delicious while it was doing that.
Sure did. It's good that you grabbed the 3 parts that needed to go back on to put the lid back together, right?
Right.
Because it was spraying out and you know, it could have easily washed those things down onto the floor.
Right.
And then we just wouldn't have been able to close it until it kind of died down, right?
Right.
Or found another one, or we would have been in more trouble. So good, quick thinking on your part. Perhaps it was the blast of CO2 that heightened your senses.
Maybe. There's a bit of time dilation, right? Everything slowed down for a moment, and I was trying desperately to get that clamp closed again. Unfortunately, the gasket just got blown out slightly by the pressure of the beer erupting out, so I couldn't quite get it on until the pressure had subsided a bit. But everybody watching got to see our first ever hop volcano in here.
Good times. How many more times do you think that will happen?
Hopefully 0.
Okay.
Hopefully 0.
That's good.
I think what we've learned is 2 pitchers of hops, okay. 3 pitchers of hops, not okay.
Yeah.
So we'll take that knowledge and move forwards with it.
And we had to erase the counter as well, right? We had to set it back to this brewery has been 0 days since a hop volcano. We got to put a 1 on it today, so it's a fresh beginning.
This brewery has been 1 day without a dumb.
Yeah.
So far.
Well, there's things that you don't know about.
There are a few hours to go yet in the day. But yeah, that beer is still merrily fizzing away. And so hopefully, maybe not this weekend, but next weekend or the following weekend, it will be ready for release. Haze Craze : Hop Volcano or something like that. We'll end up calling it, I'm sure. Look forward to it.
Yep.
We're not just here to talk about me getting sticky and wet, though, are we? What are we here to discuss on this podcast?
Me getting sticky and wet.
All right, prepare yourself.
Right, let me tell you all about it. Today I'm going to get sticky and wet with the triumphant return of Oni Koen Kolsch.
Excellent. The beer that we make together with our good friends at Devil Craft over there. You've been there for the brew day before, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
They have a very interesting brew space.
Yeah.
How does that look?
I mean, for anybody who didn't listen last week.
Yeah. Which is almost everybody.
So no one
6
listens to
billion
it
people.
Ever. We did talk about this last week, though.
We did, yes.
Okay. So the brewery is on 2 floors. And the second floor is where they have the brew house. And then it's kind of gravity fed down into the first floor where they have all of the tanks. And they have a whole bunch of tanks, a whole lot of tanks. And they're big tanks, so they can make a lot of beer. They can double batch in the brew house. And then they can have all kinds of things on the go, which they need, because if you've been to any of their 4 restaurants, I think they're 4 outlets now, they usually have about 15 of their beers on tap. Usually 17 to 20 beers total, 1 cider in there. But they have 15 different of their own beers on tap at 4 different locations. So they need to be cranking out the beer.
Right.
Not like a modest little establishment like ours. They need to be brewing pretty regularly.
And what can you tell us, before we even drink it, what do you want to tell us about this beer that we have cranked out together with Devil Craft?
To my understanding, a Kolsch is a German summertime ale. And it's traditionally... a Kolsch is made through a what would you call it? It's not quite. It's like a lager-esque fermentation with ale yeast. So you use ale yeast, but you ferment it cold at a colder temperature, like a lagery temperature, for a longer time, like a lager. Is that correct, or am I way off base?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. So it's an ale yeast that is fermented at a lager temperature. So 15 degrees as opposed to 20 degrees. So you get quite a crisp finish, but still made with an ale yeast. And this one is hopped with a whole bunch of New Zealand and Australian hops. So it's got an interesting Southern Hemisphere and a tropical fruit flavor. Why don't we just dive on into it? Kolsch is one of the most strictly defined beer styles in Germany. According to the Convention, it is a pale, highly attenuated, hoppy, bright, top-fermenting beer and must be brewed according to the Reinheitsgebot. Kolsch is warm fermented with top-fermenting yeast, then cold conditioned at temperatures like a lager.
Oh.
The brewing process is similar to that used for Dusseldorf's alt beer.
Okay.
Do you think our version of a Kolsch matches up to all of those descriptors?
In terms of process, sure. I think that for those kind of like pale, highly attenuated, hoppy, and bright, I think it matches that for sure. But I think if you're a real Kolsch head, those exist.
Which I am.
Yeah, which you are, obviously. I think if you're a real Kolsch head, this beer may not be for you.
Right. This isn't
It's
your
not a traditional
granddaddy's Kolsch.
Interestingly, Devil Craft make a much more kind of traditional, by-the-book Kolsch called Rhineland Whispers,
right,
which is great.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. But if you come to our place, you won't find that. But you will find Oni Koen, which is more like an updated version of a Kolsch, right? not updated, but like a modern take on a Kolsch. I'm going to offend. No Kolsch heads listen to this, do they? Except for you.
You're assuming that I listen to this podcast, but yeah, I do think that we match all those descriptors, though. It is highly attenuated, by which that means that almost all of the sugar has been fermented out. So it's quite a dry beer, isn't it? Often if people come in and they say, what have you got that is most like a normal beer? I will point them towards Oni Koen, because it is dry, like a Japanese macro lager. It is hoppy. It's not particularly bitter, this beer, but it uses a lot of hops in the whirlpool and in the dry hops as well. So it's got a lot of really interesting hop aroma and flavor. It's certainly bright. It's very clear. It looks like a lager as well, which I think helps people who are coming to craft beer for the first time, right? Just the appearance of it can give them a sense of reassurance, right? That
Set them at ease.
Set them at ease. This is a beer that I recognize as a beer. It's similar to things that I have seen before. And it is made with a top fermenting yeast. So I think we do match all of those things. The difference is the kind of hops that we use. So your traditional German Kolsch would be made with German noble hops, having a more kind of herby and noble character to them. Whereas our New Zealand and Australian hops have a much more
scoundrelly character.
Tropical fruity, maybe candy-like, possibly even a tiny bit of bubblegum in their character to it. What do you think of the flavor and the aroma of this one?
I do get a bit of the candy-like bubblegum nature, and too much of that bubblegum can really put me off of beers, but it's quite light in this. I also find that there's a lot of lovely light fruit character in this. I taste a bit of like, both in the aroma and on the palate, a bit of like white peaches and grapes, like yellow grapes, green grapes kind of color, kind of flavor, excuse me. Not heavy or rich fruits, but real kind of light flavored sweet fruits in there. I don't know. I like this beer a lot. This has long been, if I go cycling and end my ride here, which happens often for various reasons, if Oni Koen is on tap, that's usually the first beer I go for when I come in after a long bike ride. It's really refreshing and suits that kind of that mood well.
Oni Koen being one of the reasons that you finish your bike rides here.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I certainly, when I have finished a hot day in the brew house, if I come out here and I want to have a beer, Oni Koen is going to be one of the first ones that I reach for. As you say, extremely refreshing, especially after you've been sweating. Possibly Tuesday and Wednesday this week, I was the only man in Tachikawa who's going, God, it's bloody hot in here. This is way too hot. I need to open the door and get this fan on. I was in a t-shirt all day, even when I went outside. And even after I'd been soaked with beer. Every time we try beer on the podcast, we also like to pair it with one of 8 things. So, of course, we can't have the 2 most recent pairings, which were, of course...
location and drinking companion. Now, we did both of those in one episode. That's fine?
We did.
Yeah, we doubled them up, didn't we?
Okay.
Do we want to... So I'm just curious about the rule. Is it the last 2 that we had, or is it the last 2 episodes that we had? If so, we're knocking 3 off.
I don't care.
Okay.
Let's just roll the dice and find out. Number 3, music.
All right, we're in the clear.
Good. What's it going to be? What are you listening to? What's on the cans as you're sitting in a beanbag chair, sipping an Oni Koen Kelch?
I'm going to take it back to... You know what? We were talking about university house parties.
Correct.
I often put on 90s music in here. It's the music of me going to high school and university. So 90s rock. I have a 90s hip-hop and R&B playlist that I put on quite often. I don't know. I enjoy that, right? I think everybody has a real connection to the music that they listen to. Sometimes a shameful connection. There's a few things that I think everybody has a few bands that they liked when they were younger that now they feel a bit cringe about. But a lot of that stuff like has a ton of meaning and a ton of good memories attached to it. Anyway, this is a fun beer. I want to drink this and have a party at which potentially the floor falls in or the boat runs out of gas and we end up at a rich person's house and the floor falls in at his house. I don't care, but something along those lines. I want to drink this beer, and the music that's playing is Feel Me Flow by Naughty by Nature on repeat.
And how does that one go?
I'm not going to sing that. Everybody who is from my era knows how that song goes.
You're not going to give us just a couple of bars?
No.
I don't know what that song is.
I appreciate you trying to bait me into this, but that's not going to happen. You can very easily splice
Is it that one about jumping
audio.
around?
It's not the one about jumping around.
What is the main theme
The one
of
about
that song then?
It's about feeling me flow. I'm not sure how you're not picking this up.
I certainly felt that beer flow yesterday.
You did. All over you.
Who did you say it was by?
Naughty by Nature.
And where are they from?
I don't know. The U.S. somewhere.
All right. What kind of party would you like to be at whilst this is going off?
Like I said, I don't care as long as the floor falls in.
The floor does fall
My
in.
priority, yeah.
Okay. And you're going to be on top of or underneath the floor when it falls in?
Nah, there's no injuries. It's going to be like a carnival ride kind of thing. Carnival ride is called House Party.
Okay.
And it's a big house, and there's a floor that falls in, but no one gets hurt because it's a carnival ride. And Feel Me Flow is playing the whole time.
Sounds like a
pretty infinite loop.
The whole night.
Yeah, well, at the ride, at the house party ride.
Wow, this sounds like quite a time. How are you going to keep all the plaster dust out of your beer? Do you have some kind of sippy cup?
It's a carnival ride. It's meant to look like.
Right.
There's not actual plaster
just,
dust going around.
Dry smoke or something like that.
There's no danger, right? There's just the free fall feeling momentarily.
See.
Screams of young co-eds, but it's recorded from a house party where the floor actually did fall in.
Yes, this is getting more and more contrived. Anyway, it sounds like a pretty good time. I just hope you manage to keep all the beer in your glass as you're being dropped on this carnival ride.
You know what? That's something I didn't think about.
The Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
Imagine taking a beer on the Tower of Terror.
You just leave it at the top.
Finish the whole thing.
Momentarily.
Yeah, it would be like a Looney Tunes cartoon where
Yeah.
it stays in the glass shape as you tumble down. That's a good choice. Okay, I'm going to have to look up that song later on.
It's in our liked songs playlist.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure I recognize it as soon as I heard the first few bars. I have recently been on a bit of a Fleetwood Mac kick.
Okay.
What's your favorite Fleetwood Mac song?
Man, you know what? I've listened to a lot of Fleetwood Mac, but without looking at the titles of the songs. So I'm going to say I don't know.
Great. I would like to drink this beer whilst listening to the Fleetwood Mac song Rhiannon.
Okay.
You know that one?
Let's have a bit of it, and maybe I'll recognize it.
But specifically the live version. The album version is good.
Yep.
But the live version goes a lot harder.
Okay.
And Stevie Nicks opens by saying, this is a song about an old Welsh witch, which I think more people should just open songs.
Just
by
anything.
Openly stating, this is a book about the loneliness of being a human being. That should be
I thought they were just all
first
going to
line.
be about an old Welsh witch.
Okay, right, everything. Moby Dick. This is a book about an old Welsh witch.
Yeah, just whatever.
But yeah, I quite like that when somebody opens the piece of art they've made by just stating outright what it is about. No, this is what it's about. You don't have to interpret it. I'm just going to tell you what it's about. And similarly, I think this beer, it's all out there, right? It's just all up front.
Yeah.
It's clean, it's hoppy, it's bright, it's tropical, and it's very refreshing. You get all of that right away. So that's why I'm choosing the excellent Fleetwood Mac song, Rhiannon, which I'm sure you would recognize, similar to Feel Me Flow.
I'm certain I would, yeah.
As soon as you heard the first few bars.
Let's get weird for a minute.
That's
Okay.
shirts off.
If you're an artist and you make something, like you have made something with the intention, right? There's some meaning to it. Let's say you write a song, okay?
Yeah, or make a beer.
It has some kind of meaning to it. We can take it to beer eventually, but I couldn't quite figure that out when I started this. You make a song, you've written it with some message, some kind of life experience involved, right? So that is a reality. There is this one meaning of the song that exists. But then people who listen to it in their own frame of mind and with their own shit going on, and they're going to take it in their own way. And they might interpret it completely different from how you intended it in the beginning.
Right.
Right? So now there exists like infinite versions of the reality of that song, right? Infinite versions of the meaning of that song. If you create art, you create it with some kind of intention or some kind of message, but it gets muddled.
Yes.
The meaning gets created when people perceive it, right? When they listen to the song.
Okay.
So it's a little bit weird to just come out. I mean, on one hand, I feel like it must be frustrating for an artist to be like, no, this song is about a Welsh witch. It's not about your teenage boyfriend that you broke up with, right?
An old Welsh witch.
Yes, but yeah, it's not about that young Welsh witch that you think it's about. She's old. So I can understand how that's frustrating, but that's part of creating art, right? The art, the art exists as an object, as a song or as a sculpture, but really the art exists in the space in between the person who views it, who views it or experiences it, and the object itself, right? That interpretation is actually the art. So I think it's kind of interesting that she felt the need to come out and be like, let me tell you what this song is about.
I understand
she was frustrated or something that people were saying like, oh yeah, clearly she wrote this about this, that, and the other thing. And she was like, no, man.
No, that's not right.
Yeah.
I understand the point you're making, but what if that statement was also part of the sort of meta-narrative of the song, and it's not actually about an old Welsh witch?
Okay.
But she's just putting that out there as an extra bit of imagery,
right,
for people to analyze.
Just diluting things or
talk about
food coloring in the water
afterwards. Like, have you ever done that experiment where you eat different colored jellies and the flavor that they are doesn't match the color that they are? Like
no, I haven't, but I get it.
The pink one is pineapple flavored or something,
right?
And your brain kind of short circuits, and the pink one will still taste like strawberries,
right,
even though it's not that flavor. But if somebody says to you before you eat it, this one tastes like pineapple,
right,
you're more likely to pick it up. Or maybe you get a confused melange of flavors. Maybe that's what Stevie was trying to do. Stevie, I know you're listening. You have a tour planned for later this year, I believe.
Stop by.
Yeah, why don't you stop by on your Tokyo dates? We'd be happy to host you.
Settle this once and for all.
Maybe you could sing both of these songs that we've talked about this evening. Certainly that would be quite a performance. Interesting pairings this week. It was music, right?
I had a lot in mind. There was a location. We were at a carnival. There's an activity. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But anyway, yes, music. Feel Me Flow by Naughty by Nature.
And how does that one go again?
You can look it up.
Moving on. As we said before, Oni Koen is a collaboration beer that we made together with our good friends at Devilcraft. Hi, guys. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Now that we have our own brewery in here, in our space in Tachikawa, do you think that we should continue to do collaboration beers with other breweries?
I do, yes.
Why?
There's a lot of reasons. We talked about doing collaborations before. I think maybe when we went down to Gnomecraft, we talked about this topic specifically, but it's fun, first of all. It's just enjoyable to work with other people. It can be educational to find out how another brewery does things, or have another brewer come in and say, I really like this hop, or we've been doing this technique, or whatever. That can be very useful for our own bag of tricks. But I think there are also practical reasons as a small brewery. Like, we only have 3 tanks here. So we can put out a lot of beer, but supplementing that with beers that are made on other people's systems is quite useful for us as a small brewery until we get another tank or 2 put in. So it's a bit of a mix, right? Like, number one is we enjoy it and it's fun, but there are also practical reasons to do it as well. Additionally, we do it on someone else's system. We might be using their kegs and keg stock, like how many kegs you have and how many kegs are out delivered to other bars, and keeping track of them and how many have been returned and how many empty ones you have available for a beer that's sitting in the tank. That's something that needs to be managed. So making a beer at another brewery and putting it in their kegs means they have to deal with that problem.
Always good to shovel our problems onto other people.
That's how I live my life.
Yeah, I think for me, the main thing of the points that you raised there is the sort of the educational aspect of it, right? It's really interesting to go to other people's breweries, or even just to discuss methods of making beer with other people, and to share ideas and to share techniques, because a lot of working in a brewery is just problem solving, right? You have an idea for a beer that you want to try and make, but then you have to figure out how to use the ingredients that are available to you and the equipment that you have in order to realize that vision, to get the thing that's in your brain into a glass somehow. And you can do research and you can probably find a solution for it, but somebody else may have come up with a completely different solution or a completely different way of doing things. They may have figured out a different supplier for ingredients that you hadn't even thought of. And sharing those ideas can be really helpful and really instructive sometimes as well.
You come away from the experience richer in some way.
Hopefully you both do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just ask a lot of questions and write it all down. But other times you're able to share information and to share ideas about how to do things.
I'm really excited to be on the hosting brewery side of this. Like, up until now, we've been going to other breweries.
Right.
Not so much hat in hand, but kind of hat in hand.
Yeah.
Please, sir, can we use your brewery? And now we're able to look down on people who come to us in such a state. I'm looking forward to that. Are we going to get like chairs that are a little bit taller than other chairs in here, so that when we sit down, that they know what's going on?
Platform shoes of some kind.
Something like that. Yeah, extra long ties.
Yep.
All the symbols of real power. No, it's going to be fun, I think, to have people come in here and make a beer in here with us. We've been on the side of going to other people's places up until now, and it's going to be nice to be the host for that kind of thing.
Definitely, yeah. And then we will have to figure out what to do with the kegs, right? We will be the one having that issue.
Damn it! Yeah, I didn't think about that.
But yeah, I would look forward to that and be interested in hosting a few collaborations, or even, sometimes it's interesting to work with people who don't know that much about the beer making process, but maybe own a restaurant or own a bar and want to have an original beer for it.
Yeah.
And to walk through the design process with them, because sometimes having to spell something out for somebody or having to explain your own process for how you come up with its ideas can help you to understand your own process even better. So yeah, we don't have any collaborations scheduled as of yet, but who knows, over the next few months, some of those might come to fruition. We might be able to work a few of those things out. Right now, though, all the tanks are full. We have beer in all three of our fermenters, and so you can look forward to those being released, hopefully, over the next month or so. Speaking of things being released, do we have anything coming up in the fridge or on the taps?
A little disappointed that the microphone didn't pick up on your eyebrow raise at me.
We have a separate mic on my eyebrows. Do we have anything coming up on tap or in the fridge or anywhere else do you think people ought to know about?
We just took a delivery from Cardinal Trading, which is the importer for the Virginia Beer Company, which is a brewery that you and I both love.
Yes.
And speaking of collaborations, we did a collaboration with them a while back, a virtual collaboration in which you worked together with the brewmaster at VBC.
That was very exciting.
To come up with a recipe in a series that they did that we also now do, Berliner Weiss, with some kind of fruit in it. So that's a German wheat beer, and in this case it has yuzu in it, yuzu puree in it. So we made our version, and it was very popular, sold out very quickly, and we finally got our hands on the Virginia Beer Company version. So we got cans of that and a keg, which I'm pretty stoked about. I put the cans out on sale today, so they are in the fridge already. If you want that, you can come and get it immediately.
That is ready for you to grab right now.
And the keg will go on, I don't know when it goes on.
Yeah.
So figure out when that's going to happen.
We'll probably make a big fuss about that.
We
so
should.
We're not just going to slap it on randomly one day of the week. We will let people know when that one is going to be tapped. But yeah, like you say, there are cans of One Night in Tokyo, our sour ale with yuzu, brewed in collaboration with Virginia Beer Co., in the fridge, right now, waiting for you to come and get them.
That's
Very
right.
exciting.
In addition, we have some pretty exciting cans hitting the fridge as well. We had Faction Brewing show up, which is the first time in Japan recently. And another brewery, first time in Japan coming in, is 21st Amendment Brewing, or 21st Amendment Brewery. I'm not sure exactly. But we're getting, similar to what we did with Faction, we're going to get a couple mix packs from them. So basically everything from them that is coming to Japan, we will have a few cans of.
Wow.
I'm pretty excited about that as well.
21st Amendment. I'm going to guess, my American constitutional law isn't up to much. I'm going to guess it was the amendment that ended prohibition.
I believe so. I can't imagine what other amendment would be worth naming your brewery after.
It lowered the voting age to 18.
But yeah, 21st Amendment Brewery, I believe 21st Amendment was prohibition is over.
Those both sound very exciting. Is there anything else exciting that's coming up on sale?
In addition to our normal business, we are also very soon going to be selling kegs. Not just to regular people, but to bars and restaurants that want to serve craft beer. So that's a big step forward for us. We have an EC site set up that you can find if you are a bar or restaurant owner. You can find if you go to our website, sakamichibrewing.com, there's a link to it. And on there you can sign up for an account, and as we release things, they'll show up on the site there, and you can order them through there. So I don't know if any bar or restaurant owners listen to this, but I would imagine that most of our listeners go to bars and restaurants. So if you frequent a craft beer place in your area, let them know that Sakamichi is going to be hitting the market.
Exciting. The tax office have finally approved our labels.
You bested them.
Well,
you outlasted them.
We wore each other down eventually. And after a mere 5 meetings, they finally said okay to the 6 centimeter circle of paper that we affixed to the top of the keg caps. And so those will be going on sale very soon. I'm imagining very early next week, once everything is set up. We're going to have first batch, the pale ale that we brewed, the first ever beer that we brewed on our system, and Big Ticket, which is the second beer we ever brewed on our system, and is a classic American IPA. So go and harass your local bar owner and demand that they order some Sakamichi beer from us. Both of those are available in fairly limited amounts. That is about all we have time for this week. Thank you very much for listening to another episode of Sakamichi Nights. I have been Matthew Boynton, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone.